Please.
Yes, Marvin Oliveros, Oliveros.
Penny Belgard, Belgard.
Mike Belgard, Cody's dad.
Your father?
Mother.
Brother.
Older, younger?
Older brother.
Older brother. Do you want to start out by just telling us your reaction to what you saw in there today?
Well, first thing I want to say is we had the opportunity yesterday evening to view quite a bit more footage than they showed today, obviously. I expect when you guys receive that footage and do your due diligence, you guys find some conflicting stuff happening within that footage as well. Some of the footage we did see just currently was the gentleman with the shotgun that made the fire and made the call and said he had a gun. If you pause that footage at that moment, when he said he's pointing, his back was to that officer. If you look at the footage leading up to that seconds prior, his back was to the officers. All the officers on scene, there were 5 that fired. We have obstructed views from 4 of those body cam footage. The one officer that we do know and who he is and where he was located in relationship to the scene and his involvement in the incident, he's the officer that has footage mysteriously disappeared. We asked where this footage is at. They have no answers for us. We asked, you heard me today ask, was it battery? Was he even wearing it? Yesterday we asked if it's a requirement and an expectation that all officers wear this body cam footage. The chief of police said explicitly yes, it is an obligation and expectation, but couldn't explain what happened to this footage or anything else. Please review the footage and see that once contact was made with Cody, majority of that time, I believe his back was turned to these officers. Even as they were saying he has a gun, he has a weapon, he's pointing. If you view the footage in relationship to the time that they're saying these, the footage doesn't match what they're saying. So are these tactics that these officers use because they know they're being monitored to help in cases like this? I don't know. These are questions we got to ask, because we all know from what they said, no weapon was found. Nothing was found. In the video, it doesn't show, he spoke of erratic movements. I didn't see any erratic movements in that video and the extensive other videos that we viewed last night. There was very slow movements. The erratic movements were from the officers. The anxiety, the aggression was from the officers. Cody moved very slowly in all his actions, and as you view all the other footage, you'll see different angles, you'll see him get obstructed at different times, and questions need to be asked, as well as liability on some of these situations, because what we know and what they failed to mention today was there was a total of roughly about 10 shots fired. We know a minimum of 2, possibly 3 did not exit Cody's body, and we know a minimum of 7 bullets were sprayed into a house down the street, as well as 1 into a vehicle in their front driveway. It was a broad spray. There was no tight grouping in this shooting. And the other thing is, they talk about pursuing and keep in mind public safety in these pursuits. You heard what went on. The officer that initially made contact with Cody made it a point. I heard the footage, I saw the footage yesterday, which they didn't show today, that he left that scene and made it a point to get to Rose Park to make contact with Cody. Him and his partner in the vehicle. You hear the aggression in the vehicle as they're driving. You hear the motor revving. They weren't even in pursuit of Cody directly, but they knew somehow where Cody was going to end up. They knew somehow where Cody was going to be, and he was dead set on getting there. They talk about an incident that happened a week prior. What they haven't explained is this same officer, the officer involved in the incident a week prior? What they failed to mention is they were not only looking for a vehicle, they were looking for a specific person. So up until they pulled the female out of the vehicle, they had no idea who they were making contact with. They went to that site looking for somebody else. They pursued that vehicle looking for somebody else, stemming from incidents that they talk about happened a week prior. What I see is a case of them pursuing a false suspect in the midst of things. Things happened. When they did make contact, the thing that you'll hear them talk about is he attempted to ram police officers with his vehicle. What they're trying to paint a picture of is he used that vehicle as a weapon. Okay? What we know is when they made contact with him, he no longer had that vehicle in his possession. We know the female specifically said he has no weapon, he has no gun at that moment. They know from his history, what they talked about, his criminal history, there's no violent history there. What we also know was there was a canine seconds away from it. He was the initial person that saw Cody flee through this backyard. As they made contact with him, he made the statement of, we heard it on the footage, canine's coming around the corner. I'm coming right around the corner. Seconds later, if you match up the video with all that, is when this happened. They had the area contained before Cody got there. There was no public safety issue out there. There was no witnesses in the yards or anything. Everybody was in their homes. They had him contained. They had a dog on scene. They knew he had no violent history, no violent past. They were confirmed by the accomplice that was with him that he had no weapon. They had no other reason to believe he had a weapon other than this tactic that police use when they know they're being videotaped, when they know there might be potential witnesses around, and they just throw out things like he has a weapon, he has a gun. They all said that, but yet we find no weapon and no gun. And those statements are what triggered 5 officers firing on this young man, a very talented, well-loved, non-violent young man. We understand now, if this could happen to him, this could happen to any of your children, any of your loved ones. This was a young man with no violent history. These cops had confirmations all night, but what we do know is they were dead on getting somebody because there was a history that they had pursued this vehicle. And the officer that made initial contact with Cody, was he involved in this initial incident? I'm sure police reports will confirm or deny that. But what I do know is he was dead set on, you hear it in his voice, this footage you guys will receive. If you don't receive it, we'll give it to you. We're getting all the footage. We'll give it to you. Contact us, contact the family, we'll get it to you, because there's a lot of footage that we viewed yesterday that was not here. Even the footage we saw here, everybody saw his back turned. Nobody saw what he said, aggressive movements, none of that. Nobody saw that. What we did see was his back turned as multiple officers said, he's pointing, he has a gun. Yet all of those officers can attest to not finding a weapon of any kind on him. So what made them believe this? Did they believe this, or is this a tactic? You know, stop resisting. He has a gun. He's pointing. He has a weapon. That's the stuff these other officers hear around him. The officer talked to us yesterday about muscle memory and circumstances of turning off and on video cameras and stuff like that. There's also muscle memory involved in drawing your firearm. You know, when they're trained and this is beat into their heads, there's a lot of liability that falls on the department as well for this. Not only these officers, but there needs to be justice and accountability for Cody. And there's more to come. What they showed you today is not even a snippet of what happened, but what they did show you today is what I expect you see what the rest of us saw. His back was turned. There were multiple bullets ridden into innocent bystanders' house that had young children living in that house. They went through the house. As of right now, the police have not questioned these people. As of right now, the police, we've done private family investigations. Us, right here, we've knocked on doors. We've talked to people. Everybody we've talked to, these cops have not talked to anybody. These are witnesses that saw things firsthand. But you know what? Now that they hear this, I hope they go out there and ask these people, because these people will tell what they heard and what they saw. This was a setup. They executed Cody. This was a planned setup. These officers, please help us provide justice for Cody.
Marvin, thank you very much.
Your name again?
Marvin.
Last
The
name?
brother, Oliveros.
Can you say that again for me?
Marvin Oliveros.
Okay, your relative?
Cody's older brother.
Could you spell that again? I'm sorry.
Oliveros.
And Marvin is common spelling.
Yes.
Penny, as a mother, what was it like for you to have to watch what you watched in there?
Oh, it's hard, so hard. I mean, it makes you angry, and it's so upsetting because he was so sweet and nice. He wasn't one bit violent, ever. He's never been violent, ever. And he had his arms down, or he didn't have them up at all. I don't understand that. I didn't see him up at all.
Why do you think he was running from police?
He was
He's
scared.
scared.
He was scared. He was afraid he was going to go to jail. I mean, if you had all these cops pointing guns at you, I mean, he was scared to death. I know Cody. He was scared. The night before this is what's crazy. The night before this, Cody came over to the house, and I said, Cody, what I have seen, these police officers shooting people, I said, it scares me. Sit down, I want to talk to you. I talked to Cody about this, and he says, Dad, they won't shoot me. He says, I have minimum crimes. He says, they're not going to shoot me, Dad, for what I do. And I said, Cody, your little retail theft stuff, they're still going to, you got to be careful. He says, okay, I will, Dad. And he walked out the house. The next day, he gets shot. I mean, I know he was being careful, not to act like he had a gun. I mean,
We saw that his movements were very slow.
Yeah, very slow.
If they would have said, "Put your hands up slowly and
That's what I
walk
think
backwards to us," what do cops say? Put your hands in the air, turn around, and walk backwards to us. Cody's arms were not in the air, but they were not facing to, and his back was to them. So he's complying before they're even making these requests, as far as I'm concerned. And the other thing, what you got to look at is there were 5 officers on that scene that we know of. 4, they have body cam footage. You saw body cam footage from two snippets of that body cam footage. But when you look at that, who is the most vulnerable person in that situation? Who's the most exposed? The officers behind cover on car with body armor, training on how to de-escalate situations, how to protect themselves. Officers that have other resources, tasers, mace. They had a dog there. So who is the most vulnerable? Them or the young man who we know now had no weapon on him, who we can see his back is turned towards them, and who we know has no violent history? Who's the vulnerable one and the exposed one there? 5 men pointing guns with full body armor and all the training they have? Because I know about their training. The officers just talked to us yesterday. We asked how bullets ended up in his back. The officers talked about the training they received. They pay $3,000 an officer for training to send them to school to tell them how scientifically that could happen. And they weren't ready to elaborate how somebody could be shot in their back when in situations like this. But we know how. His back was turned. There's no supporting evidence we need for that. We see it visually. Well, first of all, this is not the end. So we're going to do what we have to get justice for Cody. And if that means holding solely the police officers accountable, or the police officers and the department accountable, or the city of Salt Lake accountable for the things that have been gone on through this year. Between all the police officer involved shootings, the homicides, they're trained in de-escalation. Why are killings escalating? They talk about all this de-escalation training, all these shootings that in 2015 they talked about how much these went down. But where are we at now? 28 shootings, 18, 19, a couple more deaths just the other night. And how are they all being proved justified? How is that? That's great odds, when we know their ratio of shooting is terrible, because we know they sprayed a house, riddled a house with bullets, and let a young man suffer on the ground with two bullets minimum in his body.
I'd like to say something. I went where Cody was shot and talked to everybody there, and they were bawling when they was crying when they was talking to me. Said it was so. Cody, he was doing nothing but standing there, and when those police officers started shooting, it made him sick to see what they were doing. Cody, he was so scared. They said he was just more or less shaking. He didn't know what to do. All these cops pull up. They all got guns on him, and he's standing there by himself. And all of a sudden, you hear an officer go, "He's got a gun." He's got a gun. He's just standing there. He doesn't. It's so pathetic. What I seen. I mean, it's my son. You don't even have any idea what it feels like to see a person as good as Cody get shot down like a dog. I mean, something's got to be done with these police. I mean, they can't just go around shooting people. Look at these other shootings. If anybody takes a look at these shootings, what I've seen, it's pathetic. They shot this one kid in the back a couple weeks ago or a month ago. I seen that, and that's when I talked to Cody about it. To me, it's unacceptable. They murdered my son. Those officers should be tried for murder, what I seen. This can't go on. I'm just telling you. Cody needs justice. I want justice for my son.
And I know you guys have publicly said that Cody has been shot in the back. You guys.
We know that we have autopsy reports, the preliminary autopsy reports. They've told us the final will not come. We've viewed the body ourselves. We've so yes, there are a minimum of 2. Some of the police reporting and other things that we've obtained says there's 3, but we so potentially 3, a minimum of 2, in the back, only in the back, only in the back. And I don't care what training they've received, you cannot justify that to me. You guys see the footage. Please review the footage for yourself. Match up what they're verbally saying to what is actually being seen on the footage. They're not matching up. They're not matching up.
I'd like to say one more thing. I was talking to everybody there at the scene. Cody's friends, his one friends were coming out of the house that Cody walked into first, and they was getting in the car. A police officer came up to them, pointing a gun with a flashlight before Cody was even there. They were ready. They were all waiting for Cody to get there. To me, it looked like it was all premeditated. These guys were waiting for Cody to get there. What I seen when Cody jumped over the fence, he was standing there. They were all had their guns out. Why did they even shoot? They were all behind cars. Cody's standing there by himself, his hands down. The
officers, what they failed to mention too was prior to Cody getting there, they had already set up containment. We hear it in the background of the footage that we viewed yesterday. The canine officer confirmed as long as containment's set up, the dog can track him. Once one officer spoke and said he's not listening, I think we heard that. The officer said, I'm right around the corner with the canine. Right after that, the officer with the canine, in other footage you guys I expect to receive, you'll see the officer with the canine be the first one to approach him after he was on the ground and shot. They had the area contained. They knew where Cody was going before he got there. They had the area contained. They knew he was unarmed. They had canine. They had everything. They had options. They had many other options that they did not pursue.
Well, Marvin, this is really terrible and painful and tragic for your family, but you don't think your brother bears any responsibility? He had options in that parking lot. He could have complied, and this would never have been an issue. Do you not, is that not a...
Okay, first of all, what I'm sure you could do some research on is in situations like this, people get in a fight or flight mode, okay? And a lot of times, before that fight or flight mode, there's a lot of combobulation that goes on in their head, and functions aren't acting properly. This is scientific research. We talk about scientific research. This is scientific research. So your actions are not complying with what's going on in your head. And with 5 officers' guns on you, if you look at the video as they approached him, the best description I could come up with is deer in the headlights. Deer in the headlights. Please review that. Deer in the headlights. Once he started coming to and realized what happens, you still notice no erratic movements, as the officer stated. What you notice is a step back, a step back, a step back. The officer went at the Sugar House location,
yeah.
But that's a whole different scene. And that weapon, as I said, was no longer if there was an opportunity to claim it justified, would that be the opportunity to claim it justified, as opposed to when you know he no longer has this vehicle, what some might call a weapon, when you know he has nothing in his hands, when you know his girlfriend had also said there's nothing, when you know he has no violent history. So so I mean, in the same situation, if a suicidal man had a gun to his head, you see the weapon, what do the officers do? They don't shoot him, they beanbag him, they tase him, they mace him, they tackle him. He has a gun that they could see and witness, and he is a threat. That's the protocol that we expect in a situation like this. What they do know was this was a young man that had some possession charges, some theft charges. What does that tell us? Potentially an addiction problem. What do we know with addicts? Their responsiveness is slower. His addiction, what was he addicted to? A drug that brings you down and slows you down. What did we see on the video? Slow movements away from the officer and his back to the officer. What would the officers have most likely requested as they were detaining him? Turn around and walk backwards to us, right? As he was walking backwards to them, would it be justified for them to shoot him? No. His back was to them. It's not justified to shoot him. That's the stuff that we do know. We know more, and it'll come out. So please keep up with us, and we'll reach out to you guys, and we'd love the opportunity to continue speaking with y'all. And we appreciate you being here today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can I get a phone number from
Yeah.
you so I can stay in touch?
989.